Hello, hello. Welcome. Hey, Barrett, Kathy, Claire, Chris, Heather, Lucine, Min, Regina, welcome. Come on in. Glad to have you. We'll get started in just a second. Introduce yourself in the chat. If you're new, say hey. Where are you from? Okay. I want to be able to see that, and I want to be able to see the Q&A box. Hi, Min from Arizona. Hi, Barrett in Tampa. I know Barrett in Tampa. Sobia from St. Louis. Nice to meet you. Glad to have you. Heather from just outside of Houston. My dad is in Houston with my stepmom today. Just got good news on a scan they did at MD Anderson. Mary in Vermont. Hello. Kathy from Alaska. All right, come on in. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. If you've never been here before, we've got a whole 30 minutes together. And my hope is that in those 30 minutes, I'm going to be able to answer as many questions as you ask me. And we can do that in a couple of ways. One, you can pop it in the Q&A if you click on the little Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. You can type in there, and you can type anonymously if you prefer, whatever makes you feel the most comfortable. Any questions, I'm happy to answer, whatever is on your mind. I always like to remind you that it sometimes seems like you're the only one with that question, but it's almost never true. So if you're hesitant to ask a question, chances are good that there are people who are either live with us or who are going to catch the replay who will be very glad that you asked the question that you did, because they also have the same question, and maybe they weren't here to ask it, or maybe they weren't brave enough to ask it. So I encourage you to ask anything that is on your mind. It could be holiday related, grief related, widow related, relationship related, whatever it is. The other thing that we can do is that we can coach in person. Or on video, I guess I should say. And in order to do that, all you need to do is just click the raise hand button. So you'll click raise hand, and then I will see that you have raised your hand. That means you want to come on camera and you want to actually have a conversation with me, and I can promote you to panelist so that I can see you and you can see me and everyone can see us. And then we can have a conversation and I can help you that way. So while you are thinking about what you might want to ask, or typing your questions in, or mustering up the courage to raise your hand, let me introduce myself real quick, because I know some of you are new. So I'm Krista St-Germain, and I'm a master certified life coach, also a widow, also a mom. My husband died in 2016. It was hit by a drunk driver. And so it's not a loss that I saw coming. And it was quite, unusual in that I felt at that exact moment that it happened, that just life was just on an absolute high. He was my second marriage, kind of a redemption story. I had struggled so much in my first marriage, and then leaving that marriage, and finding him was just like, oh, like, the clouds parted and the angels sang. And to me, it was, okay, finally, like, this is where I want my life to be, and my best days are ahead of me. And so you can imagine, as I'm sure your person's death threw you for a loop, and Hugo's death definitely threw me for a loop. And what I pretty quickly realized is that I didn't actually know anything about grief that was accurate or helpful. What I thought I knew, or what I did know, was 5 stages. That's all I knew. I knew 5 stages, and turns out that's kind of outdated and not very accurate and kind of unhelpful. And everything I tried in therapy, it was, helpful to process it, but it wasn't really getting me the traction that I wanted to get. I really did believe at a certain point that I probably wasn't going to love my life again. And maybe I just need to get used to that, and that I would just be okay, but I would be okay for the kids. And at least I was lucky because I had him and I had experienced what that was like, but that, it just wasn't going to be for me. And thank goodness I discovered coaching. And I discovered it really not even grief coaching, but just kind of general life coaching, and started applying some of the tools that I was learning. And that's when I started getting traction. And when I got far enough along, I decided, okay, more women need this information, and I could really be helpful if I specifically worked with widows. So that's what I've been doing since about 2018. And I run a couple of group coaching programs, and my love in life is helping widows love life again. I strongly believe in post-traumatic growth. I am not a fan of toxic positivity or faking our way there, but I do believe that we can genuinely love life again. And we get to choose how we play the cards that we're dealt. We don't get to choose the cards, but we get to choose how we play them. And a lot of widows are out there going through the motions. So I don't want any of us to do that. I want us to keep going until we love life. That's what I'm here to do. So, in service of that, I want to make sure that you have accurate information about grief, that you know that you're not alone, that we can normalize some of the things that are probably going on in your mind and in your heart so that you can go on to create what it is that you want next, even if you don't know what that is. So that's why I do these calls. I do them once a month. They are always free, they are always public, and I just want to answer your questions and see how I can help. Hey, Priscilla. Okay, so tell me, what questions do you have? How can I help? Because I'm looking in the Q&A box and y'all are kind of quiet. Maybe you need a couple of seconds to think about what you want to ask. I know this can be a hard time of year too. Right, Jamie? Everyone must be doing really well. Which, if that's the case, I'm not going to knock it. We'll take it. Hey, Leah. Just looking to see. Oh, hey, Mary. Parker Performance. I don't know what that is. Sounds cool. No questions at all? It's going to be a short call, y'all. I know it is a first. Okay, Min's got a question. Let's see what it is. Okay. She says there's Grief Essentials and Mom Goes On. What program is best for me? It's been about 6 months for me since my husband passed. The price is concerning too. I love your podcast. Okay, great question, Min. So, Grief Essentials and Mom Goes On are quite different. Mom Goes On is my original program. It's the one that's been running the longest. It's the one that I created for women who believe that they are in what I call a grief plateau, meaning that their grief is manageable. They are not struggling to get through anymore. They've kind of figured out how to be okay with the intense ups and downs, or maybe the intense ups and downs have smoothed out just a little bit. And they are ready to focus on what does life look like now, not how do I survive my grief, how do I make this easier, how do I have an easier experience of something that is very hard, but okay, I've kind of got my bearings now. I really want to love my life again. I don't know what that looks like. There's so many things in my way. How do I do that? So that's what Mom Goes On is for. Mom Goes On is a lot more you have to have a lot more cognitive capacity in Mom Goes On than you do in Grief Essentials. Jamie just popped a link to the grief assessment in the chat. That's why we have that assessment. If you take that assessment, it will steer you towards the program that is best for you. What we don't want is to get somebody in Grief Essentials who, you're already doing pretty well with your grief and it's a little bit basic for you, and you would be better served to do something a little bit deeper and a little more introspective. But we also don't want is to get you in something that's more introspective when your grief is running amok and you've got widow fog like crazy and you can't remember anything and you can't think clearly and you're just looking for survival strategies and accurate information about grief. So hopefully that will give you a little bit of clarification. The grief assessment will help. If all else fails, take the grief assessment. I have a team member, Suzanne, who she's the one that texts people and offers to answer questions and help them. She's always happy to get on the phone with you and help you sort through that. If you still aren't sure, that's literally her job, is to make sure that you end up in the right program. So she can help you there too. Karen, are there widows who actually enjoy the holidays again? Yes, there are widows who enjoy the holidays again. Let me also say, though, that enjoying the holidays doesn't necessarily look like being happy throughout the whole holidays. Enjoying the holidays means, can I embrace the whole emotional experience that I have during the holidays? So if we only define enjoying the holidays again as a narrow experience of I feel happy, I feel joyful, I feel grateful, and that's it, yeah, I don't think that's very realistic. I don't think that's very human. Yes, there are some widows who are in that spot, but what I really want us to set our sights on is, how do I make room for the whole human experience of the holidays? How do I make room for myself to have sadness? How do I make room for there to also be joy along with the sadness, right? So that it's a lot of living in the and it is a much broader and more generous definition of happiness during the holidays, which is human. And so that's what we're going for. So can I make peace with any sort of emotion that I would ordinarily resist? or judge myself for? Can I make space for that? Can I let it be with me, as I am grateful, as I am finding things to be joyful about? So yes, Karen, yes, they can. Ooh, look at all those podcast links that Jamie is posting. I love it. Jamie knows the podcast pretty darn well, so she's posting a lot of links in the chat that are relevant episodes. If you don't know about the Widowed Mom podcast, it is free. You can listen to all 340 something episodes there for you anytime. So Jamie's posting links to that. Okay, Anonymous says, coming up on the first year anniversary of his death, Christmas Eve, not really enjoying the holidays right now, just getting through. Yeah, of course. And there's no pressure to enjoy the holidays, right? There's no shoulds here. At a certain point, you might find yourself wanting to enjoy them in ways that maybe don't resonate with you right now. And we can address that when we get there. But first year, woof, right? Your body is remembering what happened. The lead up is there. So just, allowing yourself to feel what you feel and figuring out how to support yourself as you feel it is a great use of your time and energy. We definitely aren't going to get anywhere all that productive if we're trying to force ourselves to be joyful or happy. So please, I hope you're not putting any pressure on yourself, Anonymous. When I'm saying happier holidays, it's never from a place that says we should be happier on the holidays. It's from a place that says, hey, if you want to have a different experience of the holidays, that is your prerogative and you have the agency to do that. So that's it. That's what I'm saying. Okay. Chris. I'm trying to figure out how to train my brain to deal with the overwhelming sadness that comes from just the missing of my husband and being here with me. Yes. And maybe what might help send you in a useful direction here is maybe thinking less about trying to train your brain about how to deal with sadness and more about helping your body understand that it is safe for you to feel sadness. Which might sound like I'm saying the same thing, but I'm really not. So if our nervous system doesn't have the capacity to allow for sadness without feeling unsafe, then it's not something you can really solve at the level of our brain. We can't think our way into safety so much. And so, Chris, you might want to consider some body-based tools. So tapping would be one of my favorite, whereby you're actually sending a message to your body that you are safe as you are allowing yourself to feel how you feel, which you're telling me is currently sadness. So you could learn the whole, tapping technique. And Mom Goes On, I bring in a tapping coach and we teach tapping and we have group tapping calls. But also you can go to YouTube and learn how to tap. And so what you might just tap with is, the truth, right? Of I miss my husband. I feel this overwhelming sadness because I miss my husband. And right here and right now I'm safe, right? So it would be like, even though, right, we always start on the side of the hand, even though I feel this overwhelming sadness because I miss my husband being here with me, right here and right now I'm safe. And you would repeat that 3 times. This overwhelming sadness because I miss my husband. And right here and right now I'm safe. So we're stating the truth that we don't particularly love, but it feels true. And then we give ourselves a grounding statement that reminds our nervous system that we are safe. And we start on the side of the hand, setting that up a few times. And then you go through all the tapping points, this overwhelming sadness, right? Or this sadness. I really miss my husband, right? This overwhelming sadness. And so what you're doing is, because you're tapping on these acupressure points, your nervous system is getting the experience that you are safe, and you're telling the truth and articulating what is true for you, which is that you're feeling sadness. So the energy of the sadness is starting to move through and your body is starting to feel safe so that can happen. That's probably where I would start. There's also, if tapping doesn't resonate with you, Jamie popped, because she's good, she popped a link to an episode of the podcast called How to Feel Better Now. And that's another option for you, Chris, which is my now process, NOW, name, open, witness, which is another way of feeling feelings. And you might experiment with both of those and see which one you like. There are more, but that's a good place to start. Okay. So be it. It's been about 6 months. I think I've done better than most based on stories I've heard, but lately it's been more emotional. The brain fog is the worst. I still can't focus at work and it's concerning me. Okay. Wouldn't it have been nice if they had warned us about the brain fog? It would have been nice. I wish somebody would have warned me. So, first of all, there's nothing linear about this. And we tend to, just because of this productivity culture that most of us have been, marinating in since we were wee little ones, we tend to assume that we're supposed to be making this sort of straight line progress in grief. Like it's supposed to always be feeling emotionally smoother and the brain fog is supposed to be lessening as we go. And that is not reflective of most people's experience. So it might feel like if your brain fog is more intense that you're sliding backwards. I want you to hear that there's no such thing as sliding backwards. And I want you to hear that it just comes in waves. It's not really very predictable and it's definitely not very linear. So brain fog is normal. It's very common. We get our whole body is impacted by grief, right? All systems are impacted and our the highest part of our brain's processing capacity takes a hit. And so it can just feel like, that buffering wheel on the computer where you're kind of spinning and you can't quite recall or you can't quite think through. And that's really frustrating when you're not used to that experience. And it can be concerning because you might think, well, that means I'm sliding backwards or I should be getting better by now. And I just want to say, nope, it is going to pass. And we just want to consider gentle basics for brain fog. So am I getting enough rest? Am I giving myself enough water? Am I eating quality food? Am I incorporating some gentle movement in my day, right? Am I doing all the things that I know look like a bare minimum baseline of taking care of this, you know, body that I have? And that's what we need to be focusing on. And then noticing that the more we worry about brain fog, the more I'm not saying I don't want to say that it's going to get worse if you worry about it, but your experience of it will be worse. The brain fog may not intensify, but you will definitely start to have anxiety about it, and it's going to resolve on its own. It's nothing to be anxious about. If you have more questions, Sophie, about that, definitely let me know. But I'm sure you're doing probably much better than you're giving yourself credit for, and we just got to not use this linear idea and not worry about things that actually really are common and will eventually go away. Okay, Susan, so I'm almost 5 years out from losing my husband, and I still feel utterly exhausted mentally. After Thanksgiving, Thanksgiving really tired me out. October was his birthday, then Thanksgiving, Christmas, and his death date is in January. I'm just surprised with how I'm thinking about him morning, noon, and night. I'm in a good place in life, but this is always overshadowing everything. Yeah, so what I'm picking up the most here is utterly exhausted mentally. So there's a whole lot of overthinking going on, it sounds like. And what I wonder is, yes, we could look at your thoughts for sure, but also I wonder what might you be doing or might not you be doing that helps you stay in the present moment, right? If we're thinking a lot, it tends to be about the past or the future. It's not so much present, right? Like we're imagining what life would be like if he were still here, or woulda, shoulda, coulda-ing about the past, or we're worried about something we don't think we'll be able to deal with in the future, or how we might not be as happy as we want to be, or what, we don't have him in the future. There's some sort of past focus, future focus. And if we can find ways to, in the present moment, stay in our body, sometimes that can be very helpful. So that could be, again, tapping. That could be any sort of mindfulness activities, meditation. That could be physical movement. So consider those two options. One could be we look at your thinking and consider whether we want to change your thinking. And by that, I mean, what are all the thoughts that are exhausting you mentally, right? We could actually look at those thoughts. Can be very valuable exercise. Also, though, instead of looking at the thoughts, we can look at ways to keep you in the present moment and in the here and now, such that the thoughts aren't so problematic. So I would consider both of those options, Susan. Okay. In general, Anonymous asks, how to make location triggers bearable when the location is your job? The hospital, 18 months out of loss, just happened today. Okay, so I think that means you work in a hospital and you are probably having maybe some triggers based on what happened in the hospital. I would treat this as a nervous system issue, right? So thank goodness we have a nervous system that is designed to keep us safe and that does so without our conscious permission. It's constantly scanning the environment and sensing for threat. And when it finds threat, it changes such that we move or, do what needs to be done to reduce our exposure to that threat. So we fight, we flight, we freeze, we fawn, right? We know, we've heard these things. And so when you're telling me that you've got a location trigger, what I am guessing is happening, because it happens all the time, is that your nervous system now associates the hospital with danger. Would make sense, right? Because if your person died there or something arguably traumatic happened to you there, then yeah, that makes sense. So what do we do? Well, we have to figure out, how do I help my body understand that this space is actually safe? Yes, something happened here that wasn't safe, but this space is now actually safe. And that is something that we do with the body, right? Again, tapping is a great thing. EMDR. There are many, well, not many, several effective techniques that we can use to do this, where you retrain your body so that it doesn't continuously associate that space with danger. So for me, Hugo was killed as a result of a drunk driving accident. So for a long time, until I did a lot of tapping, actually, anytime I would see someone on the side of the road getting changing the tire on their car, if I had to pull over to the side of the road, if I saw an ambulance, if I saw a Durango, if I saw a Camry, right, there are lots of things that my nervous system decided meant danger was present, that I systematically went back and neutralized. So you definitely can do it. Please don't give up until you have done it. There are quite a few great ways to do it. Tapping is my personal favorite. Again, that's why I bring in somebody to help with tapping in Mom Goes On, because I'm kind of obsessed with it. Yeah, you're totally welcome. Okay. Anonymous says, I'm not sure if it's just me, but I'm fearful of the future. I never imagined I'd be a widow at 46. I'm fearful of making decisions. I'm fearful of being alone and no one to grow old with. I'm always worrying about the future and I can't be present in today. You are not the only one. It is definitely not just you. That is a huge reason people seek me out, is because that is the experience they're having, and it's not the experience that they want to have. So we probably won't solve all of this today, but what I want to point out is that it is by design, again, our body has many ways of trying to protect us. And so sometimes all of these fearful thoughts, right, seem necessary and protective. Like if somehow I worry about this enough that somehow I'll solve it. Somehow, if I worry about the decisions that I'm making enough, then I'll eventually come to the right decision because I worried my way there. It can seem very productive, but I think you're having the experience that it's not, right? It doesn't actually help you make better decisions. It doesn't actually change any experience that you're having, other than it just makes it harder. And so if we can just start to notice that there's the you right now, right? And then there are all of these thoughts. And you can start to notice that there is a difference between you and the thoughts that you think. So there is the you, right? The thinker. And then there is a thought. I'm afraid of being alone. I'm afraid of having no one to grow old with, right? You are the one noticing that thought, having that thought. That thought will feel true when you are experiencing it, but we want to start gradually shifting from the space of being kind of hooked by that thought to being able to notice that there is a difference between the thinker and the thought. And the more we can create space between the thinker and the thought, which is called cognitive diffusion, so it means we're defusing from our cognitions, comes from acceptance and commitment training, then the more we can start to get leverage over our own thinking. That doesn't necessarily mean that we can control the thoughts that show up, but what it does mean is that we get to be the ones who discern whether or not we will continue believing the thoughts that show up. Just because a thought appears doesn't mean we actually have to keep practicing it, believing it, looking for evidence of it. We can actually, I've got my lip gloss, notice that we are holding a thought, see it as a thought, and put it down and pick up a different thought, right? So yes, when I think no one's going to grow old with me, I feel terrible. right? And then I start to catastrophize and worry. When I notice, oh, what's happening is that I am having the thought, I'm experiencing the thought. I'm not going to have anyone to grow old with me. I can put that down and then I can pick up a different thought. And that thought can be whatever I want it to be, right? That thought could be, I could be totally okay, even if I didn't have anyone to grow old with. I am okay right now, which means I could be okay then, right? Or we could also choose to believe, I absolutely have another relationship that will be amazing in my future, right? But the skill is being able to see, oh, there's an experience I'm having. And just because my brain offered me these thoughts doesn't mean I have to keep thinking them. It's a huge part of what we do in Mom Goes On is learning how to separate ourselves from our own thinking so that we can sift and sort and decide which thoughts are moving me away from the experience that I want to have and which thoughts will move me toward the experience that I want to have. And if I'm the one that gets to create my experience, that's really important thing for me to know. Then, once I've identified, is this thought an away thought or a toward thought? If it's an away thought, how do I put it down? And how do I actually move towards a toward thought? How do I think something that I really want to believe? If perhaps it's not well practiced, or if perhaps it feels stretchy, right? So if we're moving, for instance, from my best days are behind me to my best days in front of me, that's not something we're just going to stand in the mirror and practice, most of us, right? We need to have some actual techniques that work that help us gently ease into believing my best days are in front of me. Otherwise, our body's going to reject it, right? You can't go from I hate my body to I love my body, or I hate my life to I love my life without easing your way in. And so, but that absolutely can be taught. And it's a huge part of what I like helping people do. And Mom Goes On, we go through all the major areas of life that widows tend to get tripped up in because of the way that they are thinking and work that process so that we systematically get through all the major areas that prevent us from loving life again. And it's quite empowering, if I do say so myself. So that's what I'd be looking for is, yes, of course I feel fear. The reason I feel fear is not because there's anything wrong with me. It's because of all of these thoughts in my mind. And just because these thoughts in my mind show up doesn't mean I actually have to keep believing them. Okay. Kathy, any tips on how to deal with the person who didn't know? I'm about 10 months in and running into these people is so, so hard. Oh, okay. So you're out in public and people don't know that he died and they're like, how's your husband? And you're like, well, actually, yeah. Okay. So what I would love to know, Kathy, is not because you're wrong for it being hard, but I would love to know more about why it is hard. What about it is hard for you? So maybe it's hard for you because, you're worried that you're going to upset them. Maybe it's hard for you because you get upset all over again. Maybe it's hard for you because you feel awkward and you don't like the feeling of awkward. There could be so many ways that you might describe why it's so, so hard for you. If you wouldn't mind, if you're still here, pop that into the Q&A for me. And then I will come back and we'll pick it up from there because that will be helpful for me to help you a little bit more. Um, okay. Okay. How can I let go of the bad, unhappy memories and bring the happy memories of my husband to be what my memory recalls more often? I am kind of curious about this, Anonymous, and I'm wondering what the bad or unhappy memories are. And okay, here's what I suspect, but it's sometimes it's so hard with the Q&A. When I can't actually have a conversation with you. But here's what I suspect. I suspect there could be some judgment that you have about either him for whatever it is that these bad memories are. I suspect that there could be some judgment that you have about yourself for perhaps focusing on, and I use that in air quotes because it's not like it's your choice, necessarily focusing on the bad or unhappy memories. And so I wonder if it's partly that. I also wonder if there are some judgments that you have, which a lot of us do, about there being a hierarchy of the way that we want to feel. Meaning, if we grew up and bought into the idea that happiness is the goal, then when we notice ourselves feeling something that isn't happiness, sometimes we tend to make our experience wrong, which makes it harder to feel those feelings, which then makes it harder to process and release them. And so I'm kind of curious about all of those things. So maybe you could pop back in the chat and let me know what that brought up for you, and then we can take it from there. Okay. So Kathy, thank you. So she gave me a follow-up. So when you meet people in public and they ask you about him and then you have to, you tell the story about how he died, then she wrote, I feel like it makes me spiral into sadness later in the day. Okay. So then I'm so glad that you gave me that information because that definitely makes a difference as to how I would answer the question. So what makes you spiral into sadness later in the day is probably what we want to pay attention to here, which is going to be another story, right? So you're like happy, happy, unaware, going about your day and maybe feeling a level of neutrality or maybe perhaps not sadness, right? Something else. And then you have this experience with someone, and then you start to feel some sadness, right? Or some emotional intensity around that. And then you start to spiral into sadness later in the day. So what we want to do is prepare you for the interaction and how you might feel after the interaction. And then notice where there's a little pivot opportunity for your brain to spiral into sadness, right? So that you get a little more assertive in the way that you ask your brain to help you. So I don't know what you spiral about, but you do, and I want you to think about it. So what do I start believing after I see them that makes me spiral? What do I start asking my brain to find that makes me spiral? Is it that it's always going to be so, so hard, right? It is so, so hard. And then now my brain is now looking for evidence of so, so hard. Those are the words that you used. Is it, I feel sadness again, and then I start telling myself that I'm always going to feel sad. So, right, there's whatever you feel when that person asks you the question and you answer it. And then there's the story that you start to tell yourself afterwards. And I want to normalize this. And I want you to look for the evidence, like look for the story. What is the story? Because we can build a whole story on sadness that spirals. Or we can be like, all humans sometimes feel awkward when they run into other people in public and have to tell the story of their death. Like, hello. Of course, I can normalize that for myself without making it mean anything about my future, right? All humans have these awkward interactions as widows. It's just part of widowhood. And there's a lot of things I really like about my life. And this was just one interaction, does not define the rest of my day, right? And I am strong enough to handle awkward interactions. Those are the kinds of thoughts that sometimes we have to choose for ourselves in advance and ask our brain to focus on, lest we spiral into the sadness. So, Kathy, if that brings up any other questions for you, let me know, but that's where I would take it. Okay. Is there a way to help with sleep without medication? I'm getting about 5 hours of sleep. I would personally, I would use tapping and see how that helps you. You could get the tapping solution app. It's a nominal cost. You could go on YouTube and look at that. I would do that. And I would look at your sleep hygiene. So, there's some basic things that we can do that some of us aren't doing. I know for me, scrolling at night is really problematic. Like if I scroll at night, it's going to keep me up. I need to get away from the screens. Not only it's partly the screen, I'm sure, but it's also partly how my brain kind of starts going when I scroll. So I have installed an app on my phone that just blocks me from being able to do that. Simple solution. I don't have to think about it. It just blocks me. So you could consider that. You might consider what's your blue light exposure. You might consider some supplementation. I don't want to give any advice there because I'm not qualified to do so, but I definitely take a couple of magnesium products that I have found a lot of relief for. And I don't know where you are in perimenopause, menopause, if you're anywhere near that, but sometimes that can play a part of it, and you might want to, see what kind of support you're getting there. Um, okay. Let's see. Gosh, that 30 minutes flew by. Is there a podcast? Okay, good. I'm glad, Kathy. I'm glad that helped. Last question then. Is there a podcast episode that helps with the fear and anxiety of losing other important people in your life? Jamie, have I done an episode on that? I don't know that I have. If anybody knows, it'll be Jamie. I record these and then gone sometimes. Here's what I will say. Very normal to have fear and anxiety about losing other important people in your life. And what we're afraid of is usually the feelings, right? Feelings, we are such feelings driven creatures that when you follow the thread to the end of a fear, it's usually something we don't want to feel, right? I am afraid that I will lose other people. And then why? What is it that I'm afraid that I will feel? And you can ask yourself that, Anonymous. And maybe you need to ask why a few times until you figure it out. But what is it that I'm afraid that I will feel? And then what will be great about that is that we will know the answer of what the anxiety is really about, right? Like, I don't believe I can handle that level of sadness. I'm afraid to feel that kind of sadness, or I'm afraid to feel that despair or that grief or that level of loneliness. And then we will know what it actually is, and it will become a little bit more clear, which is nice, because otherwise it can feel like it's this a whole lot of things when actually it's usually not so much. And then we can take it in a couple of directions. One, we can remind ourselves that we've already survived all the feelings that have happened to us. And if you're a widow, you've survived a lot of feelings. None of them have killed you. You're still here, right? So we can remind ourselves of that. It's easy to imagine that the feelings would be worse in the future, but not really, right? Maybe we're wrong about that. Maybe the feelings we would experience then are the feelings we've already experienced. Would we love it? No. Would it kill us? No. Could we handle it? Yes. If that doesn't feel true to you, then we probably want to start doing some feelings work, right? And gradually through experience, building up your confidence around feelings. Nobody ever likes me for this, but this is why we do it in Mom Goes On. That's why we start there. We start with feelings and how to gain through a lived experience more safety around feelings so that you can look at the rest of your life and go, okay, worst thing that can happen is a feeling. I'm pretty good at those. I'm willing to put myself out there again. I'm willing to let myself be in new relationships, do life differently, make choices I haven't made before, or whatever it is for you that matters. And I don't let feelings be an obstacle anymore because I'm just willing to feel them, right? That learning how to get confidence around feelings is really transformative in that way. And that doesn't even count for the fact that, Anonymous, you always get to choose how you think in the future. It will seem like you don't. When we're here in the present, sometimes we forget that in the future, we still have agency. In the future, it is still also true that just because our brain offers us a thought doesn't mean we have to believe it. It is still also true that when we have realized, oh, I've just been hooked by a thought and I'm going to unhook myself and choose a new one, that once we have that skill, we never lose it. We always get to do that for ourselves. But maybe we don't have a habit of doing it. Maybe we aren't well practiced at it and we need to practice it now so that we can rely on it in the future, right? We gain confidence around feeling feelings now. We gain confidence around our ability to diffuse from our own thoughts and choose new ones right now. And we start to see ourselves as having a sense of sovereignty that maybe we didn't know that we had, having a sense of competency that maybe we didn't know that we have. And then fear about the future gets easier. Fear about losing other people gets easier. Fear about anything in the future gets easier because we are reminded, no, I'm good at feelings and I really know how to make use of my brain. I know how to choose thoughts on purpose. I know how to diffuse myself from thoughts that are showing up. I know how to take care of my nervous system, all of these things that make life so much easier and less scary. That's what I would say to that. Okay, Jamie she says, no specific podcast that I can think of, but referenced it in the parenting podcasts. Okay, cool. Thanks. And then Jamie also popped in applications. Well, there's two things. One is a grief assessment. If you are kind of wondering like, hey, what do I need next in grief? You can click on the link that she's popped in there for the grief assessment. And the grief assessment just basically tells you what stage of grief you are in. And by stages, I do not mean 5 stages. What I mean is, what do I need next in grief? Based on what I'm experiencing, what do I need next in grief? And that is not necessarily going to point you towards one of my programs. It's just kind of telling you where you are in grief. So that's one thing that is there for you if you want it. The other thing is the Mom Goes On application. The Mom Goes On application will tell you, based on what you're experiencing in grief, do you belong in Mom Goes On or would Grief Essentials better serve you? And then it will send you a training that explains what we do in both. Both trainings are very good. Even if you don't ever join, it will be very helpful to you. But you will have clarity around which would be a better fit for you and how you can get involved in those programs if you want to. And yeah, so I hope that you will take advantage of either one of those things, whatever feels most helpful to you. All right. If you love this is what we do in Mom Goes On all the time. is I'm helping people. Usually I'm actually talking to them and we're interacting as opposed to just in writing. But I love it. It's my favorite. Could someone please relink what you need next in grief? Oh, sure. All right. That's all we got. Thank you for hanging out. I kept you way over, but I appreciated it. And we'll do it again next month. And if it calls to you, come join us in Mom Goes On Her Grief Essentials. All right? Okay. All right. I love you, everybody. Thanks for being here. And remind yourself, as I always say on the podcast, I love you. You got this. Go say that to yourself. Okay. Go stand in the mirror and say, I love you. You've got this. Okay. All right. See you later, everybody.